Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we are being joined by Alise Cortez, author of Unleashed, Living with Passion and Working on Purpose. Alise, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul, for having me. It's nice to be on the other end of a mic.
Well, we're happy to have you. Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready. Let's rock and roll.
Excellent. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
As you know from the world that you live in and draw from, right, there's so much we could say to that. But I think the first thing I would have to offer, Paul, is to not go it alone, in the sense that, you know, I think we all have this, I have this idea, let me speak for myself, that if I just go away for a while, I'll emerge with a book. And it's just not true, right? So we need people to help us. And I think we need people to keep us accountable and to teach us what we don't know. So I really would offer the advice that they plug into either a writer's group or some kind of an accountability group, or whether it's their publisher, whoever it is, that one encourages them, keeps them on track, keeps them accountable. And when they say, hey, I'm going to have chapter 1 done by May 1st, it's done in whatever form. So definitely socializing themselves to a bigger whole that can support and encourage and inspire and keep them on track, for sure.
Yeah, I think having a guide, having a partner there to help you is critical, because there's such a labyrinth when it comes to publishing these days. So many different ways to do it, so many different routes, from self, hybrid, traditional, and then just getting the book done, figuring out your talking points, figuring out your direction, and then once it gets done, figuring out, okay, now what? So I think it's a great piece of advice. So always have a guide, have someone that's already been in the trenches that is familiar with that process.
I've learned so much, Paul, from talking to other authors who've gone before me and gotten, you know, the broken noses, the bloody noses, the broken bones, you know, all the things that happen along the way as you're trying to get a book out. And they've really taught me a lot.
Oh, yeah. I remember 4 years ago, I wrote my first book, and just having to learn everything I could. Spent half the day learning everything I could about publishing, and then the other half of the day learning everything I could about marketing. And it was quite the journey, man. When you start at square one, you are truly starting at square one. There's just so many things to learn and to keep up with when things change.
So true.
Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
My experience certainly is, you know, this idea of really believing, is it at a place where I can actually, you know, unleash it into the wild, if you will? Can I actually share it? Is it good enough? Have I gone through enough edits? Is it clear enough? You know, when is enough enough, kind of thing? For me, Paul, I host a weekly radio show called Working on Purpose, and I have been for about 4.25 years now, so 227 episodes, and many of those episodes are with authors. And so when I look at their books and I think, does mine, you know, come up to snuff with that? I that's where I struggle. Is it good enough to put out there?
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because I really do feel a lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome. They don't realize that they truly are an expert. I mean, if you have something great to offer to the world, why not go out there and share it and share your story? Because that's the thing that people want. Readers want something that they can connect with. And when you make that connection, it's just such a powerful opportunity.
It really is. It so is, right? You know, the power of words and connecting through a message, right? And I appreciate what you're up to in the world, because you're helping people to, one, get their message out, and two, on the other side of that, somebody catching that message in a meaningful way. I mean, how awesome is that?
Well, and I was going to ask you too, so you're going through this journey right now. This is your first book. I know you've been part of a couple of other anthologies, but you are planning to get this book out in a few months. So how are you feeling about this process so far?
Well, a couple things, if I can say to that real quick, Paul. So I'm feeling good about it, feeling really good about it. My focus, especially the last several weeks and months, have been pretty darn good. I did lose both of my parents in January, both of them in a 28-day period. And that kind of threw me off kilter for a little bit in terms of just my cadence, my schedule, my state of mind. But I got back in the saddle again, and now I have this tremendous sense of command of time and just determination that feels really amazing. And I like what I'm creating. I do think the message is one that's worth sharing, worth hearing. It's what I share when I go out to speak to audiences, which is a big reason I'm writing the book. So I feel pretty good about it. I do find myself though in that state where I'm like, oh, I, every once in a while I get sort of arrested with the idea of, wow, I get stuck with my own possibility of what I'm trying. I want to convey something good, and is it good enough? And I get stuck in my words, and that little cycle that you find yourself in. So I go back and forth between, yep, I'm good, I got this, and oh, I don't know how to put this into words. How's that for an honest response?
Well, and with that, there's always two mantras I teach my clients. One is don't be afraid to take the plunge, which obviously you're not. You're taking that plunge. But the other thing is done is better than perfect. One thing I always tell my clients is this: get the book out there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Get your thoughts out. That's what editors are for. Their job is to clean it up. Your job is to get as much of that content out there and then let them clean it up. So don't always worry about it being the perfect thing, because the beautiful thing is, even when you have the book out there, you can change it. You can update it. You can create second editions. And that's why I always want to emphasize is that done is better than perfect. Just get your story out there, because that's what people connect with.
Thank you, Paul. That's really great advice. I appreciate that.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you are planning to use in your book launch that you feel is going to work well.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I'm already starting the process of doing, and frankly, I'm learning this from other people who have gone before me. One thing that seems to work well for the other authors that I know is to really enroll other people who are good influencers, people that can tout you to their network. And so I'll tell you, on the other side of that, Paul, I'm now just on the receiving end. I'm helping Anna Lynn and Brandon Miller, who wrote Play to Their Strengths. It's a parenting book. They did that with me. They reached out to me and said, hey, you're a strengths coach. Would you help us evangelize that? So same thing with me. I want to enroll people who care about passion, inspiration, purpose, the world of work, and ask them to be part of me rolling this out. So enrolling help for sure, those influencers. And then the other thing that I have been doing already is just sharing via my monthly newsletters for my management consulting to my prospects and clients. Hey, I'm working on this. It's coming out. I have had people who have said, we want to bring you into my company to speak, but you got to get a book out first. So keeping them informed of my progress so that they can, be part of my cheering squad and invite me into their company. That's another part of my strategy. And then certainly the social media, I've found that I really love social media, Paul. I've met so many amazing people on social media, and I do feel like it's a great platform to share messages and connect with people you wouldn't otherwise have any business meeting. So those are some of my high level strategies.
Well, and they're all solid strategies too, especially with connecting with other influencers, people that are in your realm, so to speak, to help them with supporting your launch. I think that's one of the biggest things that people miss, especially when it is your first book or your second book, is reaching out to people. I did the same thing. One of my really good friends, he's actually a fraternity brother, was already a publisher, and I reached out to him going, hey, I have this book coming out. Would you be cool with writing the forward for it? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. So just one of those things, just reaching out to influencers, reaching out to people you have those relationships with, and getting them involved in the book somehow, whether it's a quote or a forward or even an editorial review, but just getting them involved in the process, going, hey, when the book does come out, would you mind sharing this with your audience, with your newsletter? And then you're usually pretty good about it. I really hear a no.
That's a great idea, Paul. Thank you very much for that. I didn't think about asking the very influencers that I want to connect with to help share on the front end, get their input as quotes or endorsements or forwards in the book. That's brilliant. Thank you for that.
Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book? And what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Boy, I tell you what, if you could just see my office right now, Paul, I have a whole wall of books behind me that I have accumulated over the years. And it's very, very hard for me to isolate what's my favorite book. But for you, I'm gonna isolate one, and if you'll permit me, maybe say something about a second. I think I have to go back to Henry James's novella, The Beast in the Jungle. And I read this, Paul, in my early 20s when I didn't go to college until I was 24. It was one of the first things I read when I was in my college experience. And if you don't know the book, it's the protagonist is John Marcher, and he has this. He's a fatalist, and he has this idea that he is destined to something magnificent or awful is going to happen to him in life, and he's just like it's waiting for him like a beast in the jungle. So he goes through his whole entire life expecting this, and in fact misses out on his whole life because he believes in this particular fate, doesn't marry. And I think what I got from that was, one, it is a book that really investigates the potential meaning in life and also its emptiness. Now, I'm a meaning and work researcher. I'm a logotherapist. I'm all about meaning. Something in there got really tipped by reading that book. And all these years later, here I am doing this work around meaning, passion, inspiration, and purpose. But it's so sad and it's so tragic and it's right there. And us readers can see that he's just missing his whole life, but he doesn't see it. And I've never forgotten that, Paul. I've never forgotten the book. I've never forgotten the rawness of that, the sadness of that. And for me, the urgency, please don't live like that, Alise. Please don't live like that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a second book, is that correct?
I did, if you'll permit me.
Sure.
Just this morning, I finished Paul Skinner's Collaborative Advantage, How Collaboration Beats Competition as a Strategy for Success. And I read the book in preparation for him being a guest on my radio show. And this morning, he and I pre-recorded. And Paul, the man, just in between the book, which has so much great messaging about how to really collaborate in order to really make the difference that you want in the world, which I want to do. You can't do it by yourself. You need to collaborate. And in fact, you're going to be able to touch more lives and do more things when you do collaborate. So between reading the book and then generating the conversation on air today, the man literally brought me to tears. And I'll read you something. What I'll say is, I said this to one of the people that I was sharing with, is having read his book and then being in that conversation with him, I feel completely discombobulated. And I think it's because he's elevated me to a higher realm that is both foreign and exhilarating to me. That is the power of words and connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I didn't unabashedly cried on air and, had to kind of recover myself, and I'm fine. This is what you call being able to be moved by another human being with a message. Don't we all want to do that?
I would say yes for that one. Well, for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, so one of my favorite quotes is by Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw, and I can't do an Irish accent, Paul, but I'm going to do my best to do an English one, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to tell you why I think it's so important. So it's words to live by. This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown on a scrap heap, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. Is that not a great quote?
That was something.
Now, you're wondering, who the heck is this Alise Cortez that I brought on the show? The reason I love that, Paul, is it really is what I'm up to in life. I am trying to help people. I call myself the anti-undertaker. I am out to help people wake up to the passion, inspiration, possibility, and purpose of their lives and, stop complaining about what isn't and make it happen. So that's why I love that quote.
Excellent. Well, Alise, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
They can go to my website, which is alisecortez.com, ALISECORTEZ.com, or LinkedIn is fine too, Alise Cortez there. Either way.
Well, Alise, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to connect with you. Thank you much.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.